Let's dive right into a scandal that has absolutely rocked Brazil. This story pits one of the country's fastest-growing banks against its highest court, the Supreme Federal Court, or STF. And trust me, this is way more than just a news headline. It's like a political thriller playing out in real time, and we're going to break it all down.
Okay, so let's just kick things off with a pretty big question. What kind of power does it take to just stop a major federal police investigation cold in its tracks?
Well, the answer seems to be tied to this absolutely massive number, 129 million reais. That's the value of a single contract that's sitting right at the explosive heart of this whole thing.
So, you've got a huge contract, right? Then you have this string of super luxurious events, and then boom, a stunning court order that just freezes an entire federal investigation. That's pretty much the basic script for the crisis we're about to get into.
To really get what's going on here, we need to pull back the curtain and look at the connections between big money and the judiciary. So let's start with who the key players are.
At the center of this storm, you've basically got three main groups. First, there's Daniel Vorcaro. He's the owner of the very ambitious, fast-growing Banco Master. Then you have several powerful ministers from the Supreme Court. And kind of caught in the middle of it all is the federal police, just trying to follow the evidence.
And this timeline, wow. It really shows you just how cozy things got between these players. From 2022 to 2024, Banco Master was sponsoring all these lavish events. We're talking New York, Paris, London. And who was often on the guest list? You guessed it, Supreme Court ministers like Guilherme Mendes and Dias Toffoli. It definitely paints a picture of some very close relationships.
So with that backdrop of everyone being so friendly, that's when the bombshell drops. This is the discovery that completely changed the direction of the entire investigation.
So the federal police are in the middle of an operation. They seize the phone of the bank owner, Daniel Vorcaro. And what do they find on it? This: a legal services contract for 129 million reais between Banco Master and the law firm of Viviane Barchi de Moraes. And she just happens to be the wife of Supreme Court Minister Alexandre de Moraes.
You can bet this set off some serious alarm bells for investigators. Two things really stood out. First, just the sheer amount of money, 129 million reais, seemed way out of proportion for the law firm involved. But the second red flag was even bigger. The police noticed that some of the payment dates lined up with times when Minister Moraes himself was ruling on cases that could have affected the bank's interests. And that discovery, well, that's what leads us to the most jaw-dropping part of this whole affair. The complete shutdown of the investigation, not by some outside force, but by a decision that came from inside the Supreme Court itself. So get this, Minister Dias Toffoli, who, by the way, had also attended those bank-sponsored events, steps in and all by himself makes a huge move. In 3 steps, he yanks the case out of the lower courts, pulls all decision-making power under his own control at the Supreme Court, and then orders the federal police to halt all further investigation. Just like that. Now, the official reason they gave was a legal technicality. It had to do with a congressman being involved who has this special jurisdiction called foro privilegiado. But let's be real, the practical result was undeniable. The entire federal police investigation was stopped cold at the end of November 2023. But this move did more than just stop the police. It basically tore the curtain back on what sources are now calling an internal war right inside the country's highest court, revealing some deep fractures between the ministers. And you can see a clear split inside the court. On one side, you have Ministers Toffoli and Guilherme Mendes publicly defending the decision. But behind closed doors, sources say there's a much larger group of justices, including people like Flávio Dino and Carmen Lúcia, who are reportedly just furious about it, seeing it as a massive overreach.
Okay, so why should you care about all this? I mean, beyond just the juicy political headlines. Well, it's because this case digs into some really fundamental questions about Brazil's democratic institutions and, the rule of law itself.
First off, it really makes you wonder, right? Where do you draw the ethical line when Supreme Court justices are attending these fancy events, all paid for by powerful business leaders who might actually have cases in front of their very court one day?
And what about this? Is it okay for one minister to single-handedly stop a federal investigation that directly involves the family of another minister on the exact same court? It's a huge question about checks and balances.
Which brings us to maybe the biggest, most troubling question of them all. Can the Supreme Court, through the actions of just one of its own, essentially shield itself from any investigation that just gets a little too close to home? All right, so where are we right now? Here's the latest.
The investigation is still frozen, thanks to that order from Minister Toffoli. The public prosecutor's office is fighting back. They've appealed and have even asked for Vorcaro's arrest again. But the full Supreme Court, they still haven't made a final call on whether Toffoli's decision is going to stand.
And all of this leaves you with this really unsettling feeling, which one analyst put perfectly. The quote is, "The feeling that remains is that the Supreme Court protected itself before it could even be formally investigated. This case is so much more than a scandal. It's really become a crucial test of credibility for Brazil's democratic institutions. And it leaves the whole country wondering, is anyone truly above the law?